Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Future is Bilingual. My name is Heather. Thank you for joining me, whether it's the first time or you've joined before. I am very excited. I'm going to talk to Maria today, and she's going to tell us all about herself. So, Maria, tell us who you are.
Oh, thanks, Heather. Super excited to be here. I am a child of immigrants. My dad was originally from Spain, my mother Cuban. I was born in Miami and raised in New Orleans, which is a big part of my childhood in the sense that we weren't raised in a metro area with a lot of Hispanics. There were no Hispanics in our neighborhood. We were the
How long did you
anomaly.
stay in Miami? Because Miami's got tons
Oh
of
yeah, we only
Cubans.
stayed. I was there for 2 weeks, and then we moved to New Orleans.
Oh, okay, barely.
So I really grew up in New Orleans, and we were very different. We were the family that spoke a different language. They didn't know what to make of us, and it very much shaped my childhood. And it took me years to understand how significant the fact that we spoke a different language and employed a different ethos, meaning we lived a different culture. That was a big part of it too. A lot of culture clashes.
Do you know
Because
why your parents decided to move from Miami, which you'd be immersed in Cuban culture and other, Hispanohablante like cultures, to New Orleans? Was it a job
Yeah,
related?
my dad was a civil engineer and there was work in New Orleans. So that's why they moved there. They had no affinity to it prior to that.
An opportunity.
An opportunity. But the whole inside the home, it was the Spanish language to our parents and to my grandmother, our siblings. We only spoke English to each other. And the culture was, and the ethos was all about collectivism, all about family and community. That's the most important thing, right?
So
and then
interesting you bring that up. I just did a lesson on that with my English language learners. I have adult English language learners, and we did a whole lesson on the collectivist versus the individualist society, because it is a huge mind when you think about it, whoa. So maybe tell us a little bit about that, because that might be a new term to people. Like, if you've only really grown up in the States, maybe you don't even know what that means. What does that mean, collectivist?
Yeah. So if you think of Latino cultures and a lot of cultures, Southern European cultures, they're collectivists, meaning that their overarching ethos puts the greatest and the most paramount value on relationships between family and community. That it's very tribal. It's the top of the hierarchy is you take care of family, and you lose yourself in your family. It's all about your family.
It's about the group.
It's about the group, and it's about
for the group.
Yes, and what's best for the group, and it values interdependence. It's all about interdependence. And then when it's
actually most societies, because when you mentioned it's definitely Latino, the whole Latin American, a lot of those, but also African, right? You mentioned the word tribal. Like, it's got the idea of like taking care of the tribe, what is best for the tribe, sharing so that everybody has. But even the articles that I was reading with my students was focused on Asia. So Japan is a really prominent example, but like India, Southeast Asia, like basically most countries,
most of the world is
except for like Western Europe and the US.
Western Europe,
Canada, like
Scandinavia. I mean, there are some countries that are definitely Austria less collective,
and it's a scale. It's not like 100%, but it's like we're more towards the individualist.
Right.
What do I do to make me happy? What do I need? What's in it for me?
Exactly.
It's a huge difference.
It's if anyone is that's hearing this wants to really get engrossed in this whole topic of the culture clash, Sam Huntington, the late Sam Huntington from Harvard, wrote a great book about it, Clash of Civilizations, and it really grounded me in understanding the American ethos, because I was being raised at home with the Latino ethos and collectivism, and I'd go to my American school and I was taught in English, and I was taught to be self-reliant and independent. So this culture clash between independence and interdependence is at the core of the issues, and it impacts everything when you're growing up.
And that's a good point. We shouldn't say like one is good or bad, because I think sometimes we tend to say that like, oh, it's selfish. The whole individualist is kind of selfish. You're only thinking about yourself, but at the same time, it's teaching you to do things for yourself, to be, what's the word I want? Like resilient, and you can figure things out on your own. So there's good and bad to both, but for sure. Even
Right.
my student from Guatemala was like, I always share my snack with my coworkers, and they're like, "Why are you sharing with me?" Like,
Yeah.
you don't do that here, you know? Like everybody has their own, you know, and they bring their own and they take care of themselves. But like she's like, that's how I was raised. My mother told me like you always share, you whatever you have, you give to the group, you know? So
Yeah. Oh, it
it's
impacts everything. I mean,
everything.
your social bubble is very different. A social bubble to a Latino collectivist is it's very minimal, meaning, it's okay to hug and to touch and what have you. For an individualist society, they have a larger social bubble. There's greater distance between when you introduce someone and you shake their hands. So there's less physical contact. Individualistic cultures are much more informed by discipline and frugality. And they have a reputation for being a lot more rational and less emotional. So it's like there are a million differences, and when you grow up with them,
seeps into everything, like you said, because we can give so many examples of where this plays out.
Oh yeah,
and it causes confusion, or like, what, like, why are they doing, you don't understand why someone's doing something. Yeah, I mean, it really, because it's a mindset, it touches every aspect of what we do and how we think.
Yeah, totally. And
it's fascinating.
I work in marketing, so it informs everything I do. So I work with brands that are trying to reach the Hispanic market. And I'll give you an example of how these differences play out in the real world, right? So I had a brand years ago who came to me. It was a retailer, had developed a clothing line that had comfortable clothes for women. Okay, that was it was all about comfortable clothes for women. And
that's what we want. There we go.
They started doing a campaign to the Hispanic market, and they translated all of the ad copy to Spanish. And they started targeting first generation Hispanic women who are the most collective, and they weren't seeing an uptick in sales. And they sent me the copy and they said, did we do a good job translating? I said, well, you translated the language beautifully, but you totally forgot it's a totally different culture. And they were like, well, what do you mean by that? It's like, well, his first generation Spanish dominant Hispanic women are part of a collective. They don't dress for comfort. That's a very independent value. They dress for appearances because they're dressing for others. They're not dressing for themselves. So you see it play out in all aspects of their lives. The sharing, appearance is paramount, not comfort. The Marianism, which is very much a part of collectivism, which is, you suffer like Mary, Mother Mary. It's there's value in that. Everything is for others. It's not for yourself. Yes. I could go on and on about this for a while, because that greatly informed my childhood. I ended up studying psychology to understand my childhood. Then I got a graduate degree in mass communications, and I embarked in advertising. And I had a
that gap.
Yeah.
Yes, they translated, but that's not the whole job. Like, you could put the word like ropa cómoda, but like that's not going to help if like they don't care about comfort. Like, you can put comfortable clothes, but like that just it's gonna go in one ear out the other, and it's not
the unique value proposition, right? That's what we talk about in advertising. Yes. So
so interesting. And that's where so many probably things fall through the cracks, where we think we're doing a good job, and like, why isn't this working? Like,
why isn't this resonating?
Think that just we can translate with Google and AI, and like, okay, we'll just translate. Even I shared on social media my fitness app. I do little like 10-20 minute things, and I changed the language to French just for fun, but it automatically gives me subtitles. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I was doing the workout, but it put it's funny because this is a marketing term. The term that they put was like something in publier, but the English was like release, like hold it and release it. But the word like publier is like, publish it, release it to the public. And they just translated, they just put it in Google, and it gave them the word publish.
Oh wow, that's pretty
not
funny.
Like release, not like let it go, like it's just so I was like cracking up. I'm like, did this really happen? So I took a screenshot and shared it, because my language loving followers would appreciate that.
Oh yeah.
But that's the same thing, where they just translate and they think that the message has come across, but like they're translating idioms, they're translating it's just not it's not easy. So hats off to all the translators. All the people bridging gaps like that
doing. You have to be both linguistically and culturally relevant. But so years ago, I started focusing on a character. One of the things we uncovered in research that I was involved in about 15 years ago, when people were studying the Hispanic market, they were studying the Spanish dominant Hispanic, which is the first generation immigrant, but they weren't studying the bilingual, bicultural, those of us that were born here or came here at a very early age. The 1.5 generation comes to the US at the age of 10 or younger, and the second generation were born here. And the reason that was happening is because general market, our American market and our American brands, the argument they'd always give us was, well, you speak English, you're clearly English dominant, our general market message is reaching you. Oh, so what we just talked about, my response was always, it's reaching me, but it's not touching me, which is why I'm not brand loyal, right? There's no resonance. There's no emotional resonance because of what we just talked about, right? You're talking about appearances, and I'm, as a bilingual, bicultural, the head, but not
the heart.
Right. And as a bilingual, bicultural, we're the largest part of the Hispanic market. We represent 67%. Most Hispanics are born here, right? Yes. And a lot of people don't realize that. So we were an emerging cohort, and we did a study years ago to uncover interesting findings about the bilingual, bicultural. And I'm sure folks that listen to your podcast will appreciate this.
Yes, our thesis, if you could share the links and all this, the book and the links and all the things you're going to mention. We're going to need it all in the show notes.
Yeah,
so when they hear this, they can go click.
Yeah, so our thesis was pretty simple, and it was that children of immigrants are high value consumers, not only because of their sheer size, but because we become the Sherpas for our foreign born family members. We translate the language, interpret the US ethos and traditions and all that comes with that. We inform brand and product purchases at a very early age. We demystify services and technology and a whole bunch of things for our parents. Yep. And it's actually a role we play our whole lives. And more importantly, as we mature, our sphere of influence becomes culturally and linguistically agnostic. It's not just our Spanish dominant friends and family, it's our American friends and family too. Mm-hmm. We just become influencers because part of that role as a child, it creates burden, it creates responsibility, but it also creates a lot of resilience and a lot of I can take care of this attitude, right? So
you are touching on some issues that need to be addressed, and I don't think I've had a guest talk about that, where the responsibility that falls on these children of immigrants.
Yes,
I'm a child of an immigrant. My father is English speaking, so we didn't ever have that burden of like having to translate, having to answer calls and talk about insurance at the age of 5. You're the mediator, you're translating, but like that's a huge burden, and that happens so often, and I feel like it's not talked about. And
it's not, and I'm here to talk about that. Yes, that is why I'm here. I think I'm here. I think I was brought here to talk about this, right? Mm-hmm. Because I also read to kids my books at school through Zoom or in person, and they give me such great feedback. And I have a letter that a little girl from New York wrote me that's on my refrigerator. And she says, my name is Rosa. I came to the US when I was 3. My parents are from India. I am MariVi. And I have had that from many kids from Egypt, from Saudi Arabia, that they see themselves in this character who is playing this role, and it's almost second nature. No one's applauding it. It's just, that's who you are and that's who you become.
It's expected.
And it's expected. It's totally expected.
Devalued, where it's like, if you don't do a good job, now you're yelled at.
Yeah.
Or, the person on the other end is annoyed with you because
Right.
You don't even know how to translate what your parents are saying. Yeah, I mean, it's totally like you have no choice. And tell us about this. You alluded to your book, so please.
Yeah. So I started thinking. I was doing nonprofit. I was just doing volunteer work for this nonprofit, and I ended up working with a lot of kids that were Hispanic kids like me, that were U.S. born, and they were having the same issues I had at school, being embarrassed to raise your hand, feeling insecure because we were so different. And I thought, how can that be all these years later in LA, kids are still feeling like that? So
even with the numbers rising,
even if you're
numbers rising, that's the majority of the population.
Yes,
why
there's still
issues
some
not
of that
working themselves
out,
right? Like, that's a great question.
Right. So the psychology background,
because each kid is fighting it in their own
they're doing all
right?
of
They're
this
doing
stuff
all the work inside, and no, it's not being talked about.
Yeah. So I thought, we played that role as kids. I played that role as a kid. Had I had a Sherpa or a character, a childhood character that I could relate to, and that could mirror what I had lived, life would have been easier for me and for a lot of us. And so I started just writing, and I ended up putting together this framework for, it's a longitudinal book and video series, and it starts from first grade to sixth grade, and it follows this character called MariVi, which is a nickname for Maria Victoria, and the whole series is called the Master Navigator series. And I really struggled with what to call the series, but it had to be that because I wanted all the kids that read it, or the adult kids that read it, I have a lot of adults that read these books, to recognize the fact that they are the master navigator.
I love the word master.
They're not.
Yeah, like
I do too. It's like
you
and if you don't feel like you are mastering it, and you see it as a deficit and a weakness and just a burden now, you will see it as your superpower down the road. And that's what I wanted kids to walk away with, right? They are the master navigators.
And it's very empowering. I was at the online polyglot gathering, which has lots of speakers talking. And one of the talks was about having an alter ego and like the psychology behind having an alter ego in your language learning. But of course, she said this goes to all aspects of your life, where like, what would Superman do? Or like, how would Batman, she was talking about studies that kids, they did 3 times better on a math test when they were told to like think that, I think they got dressed up like their favorite superhero. Right. And they literally did better. This was like 8-year-old, 3rd grade kids. But like there's just this psychological thing that happens where we're like, I don't know if we just try harder, or we persevere more, or just it gives us some sort of this power, right? That like we identify like with that alter ego. And she said it can be anything. But yes, having this MariVi, right? And I love it that she has this long Hispanic name, Maria Victoria.
Oh, yes.
It's so culturally relevant. And
yes.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful beyond what we can even imagine. Like, what is that gonna, it's just, that's the beauty of being a teacher or an author, right? Like you touch a child's life for however long they're reading the book or however long they're your student, but you don't know what that carries down the road into their lives. And
right, exactly. And the flip side of that is you do know that if they don't see themselves and they don't have a character or an alter ego, however we frame it, that they can say, this is me in the media, then there are consequences. I mean, I think they're emotional, mental, physical, where you're raised, where you're never seeing yourself and you're already feeling unsettled. There's a Spanish saying, ni de aquí, ni de allá. You don't feel 100% at home and you don't feel 100% at school, because you really are straddling 2 worlds. Yep. And you're not 100% of either of those worlds. You're 100% of being bilingual, bicultural. And that's
kids can identify with
third culture kids.
There,
exactly.
Like, where am I from? What's my identity? And every child, even the ones monolingual raised in the same town, have an identity crisis
totally
in their teen years. Like that's a normal thing to happen psychologically,
it's part of maturity.
It's so much more amplified when you've and it starts earlier when you're straddling, I love the word straddling, these 2 worlds, and like you're constantly back and forth and trying to navigate. And it's not, and I love that you it's not just language, it's the culture, it's the ethos, it's the way of life, it's the mentality. It's so much deeper than just, oh, you're a Spanish speaker. Like, yes, and
and there's a whole other culture behind me. So this is really about helping kids see themselves, and it's also about demystifying the Hispanic market for general market, for non-Hispanic, for the non-Hispanic market. Everyone has stereotypes that we create about different cohorts, and this is all about trying to break free of that. And it follows. The thing I most like about the series is that it's very authentic, in the sense that all these kids will all see themselves. Hispanic kids for sure, but bicultural kids will see themselves. And I'm seeing the results of that from my readings with the kids. And so just to give you an example of what happens, like the first one is called school crossing. And these are navigational terms, right? Crossing. The reason it's school crossing, it's also because many kids that don't grow up in metro areas without a lot of folks like them, their first reality check is when they get to school, their parents aren't there to protect them, and they walk in and they're like, oh my gosh, I am totally different than everyone here. But what happens to MariVi on her first day of school happens to many of us. Her real name is Maria Victoria de la Paz Abascal. The teacher can't pronounce her name, so she just calls her Mary Paz. And MariVi doesn't even know that they're calling her. So that's the first thing. And that happens to all of us, right? And this, and you know, we chuckle at it, but the reality is, for a kid, what you're really telling them is, you're saying, you are not welcome as you are.
Right.
You need to come in differently, right? So we have that. Her school lunch is different. She's got black beans and rice, and all these kids have bologna sandwiches, and they make fun of her.
I would take hers any day.
Yeah. So the teacher tells the students to draw a self-portrait. And she realizes that she is the only one in the whole class that has drawn herself with her whole family at the dinner table. Again, because she comes from a collective ethos.
Love that, yeah.
So it's kind of demystifying and educating and mirroring and empowering. The readers and the characters are all playing a role in just trying to move society forward at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think the best part is, like, these kind of books, it's not just for the Hispanic kid with the two Spanish speaking, it's for the white kid, right? Like, my kids, you know, I love to buy these books and, like, let's read about, you know, this book of this person, you know, with a totally different background than you. Like, it's not limited in that sense, because it's eye-opening for all of us to see, like, you know what, maybe you're not identifying with MariVi, but you're going to identify that there's a kid like that in your class. And
totally,
you should not comment that their lunch looks disgusting. And all those lessons, they can branch out to all kids. And, you know, it's just great. Yeah. You know, I always think about it with my own, you know, they would think about it with the language, but not necessarily, you know,
with the culture,
the culture, the looking different of the collective versus individual. But there's so many things, like even the self-portrait. I love that, because that she even, you know, self in our individual's mind is me. It's all about me. And I love that she drew her whole family, because that's where she sees herself. Well, who am I? I am in a part of this family.
That's right. That's so right.
Yeah.
That. So it's all about really sharing that. And, you know, it's been very cathartic for me too, I must say, because it's like,
writing is
and they're not autobiographical by any means, but they're informed by childhood experiences, or those that I heard from others that were like me. And they're informed by what I've studied and what I know to be true in conversations with other kids. And it's like, you know, we need to create a framework for especially the bicultural, to have a place where they can a respite, a place where they can find some solace and say, okay, I'm many times we're so not even conscious of that we're doing that when we're growing up, and we don't know what impact that will have on us down the road. But seeing it, finding comfort in it, finding empowerment in it, knowing that this too shall pass, but it will pass for a greater sense of self and who you are. And it'll be a positive thing, not a negative thing.
Right. It's so different than just telling a kid, it'll be better, you know, just wait till you're 20. Like, I'm 10. I don't want to wait.
No,
you know, like those quick, easy, like just kind of brushing it under the rug, or like a quick sentence, like, you'll be happy or bilingual one day, but like, yes, but you know, they need more than just the sentence or the
absolutely
pat on the shoulder, like, you're doing a good job, keep going, you know.
So that's what this is all about. And all the characters are very true to many Hispanic families. You know, she lives in a multi-generational household, which again, the collective, you know, and her grandmother lives with her, and she's got a brother and a sister and her parents. And you know, I've had kids ask me so many great things, you know, why did you call her the Navigator? Why Victoria? And I said, well, Maria Victoria, because ultimately she is victorious in amalgamating both cultures and both languages, and her life becomes stronger, not weaker, because of it. And but she goes to school, and the first thing some kids notice on the cover is that she has a Band-Aid on her knee. It's like, why does she have it? Oh, that's very purposeful, because she's already feeling a little insecure, and I wanted to depict that physically, right?
I love it. Yeah. I can tell you've really thought every little thing through.
Oh, I've tried. And I think that's important, right? Because it goes back to what you just said, Heather, about it's so easy to say this too shall pass, or, in 20, but when you're 20, so, but they're living, I really try to get in the moment when I'm writing about this, and the feelings, and sharing those, the anxiety, the butterflies in my stomach, these were very real feelings that I remember having. And I've been amazed how many kids can relate to the authentic representation of the feelings.
100%. And even having something physical, people notice, right? Like, people will ask you, why do you have a Band-Aid? Kids notice that kind of stuff, right? Like, adults won't ask you, what did you do? Yes. But kids immediately, they see something on you. What did you do? Why do you have this? Why?
Yeah. There's no filter. So, right?
Yeah. And again, like, for them though, like, it can also be representative of, like, are they going to ask about, why are you eating this? It's all those things that kids, I love that they notice the Band-Aid, and they notice all those things.
They notice it.
But I love, that you even thought to put that physical representation of, like, there's something, I'm a little sensitive here. And it went so deep. Now I need to know, is this available in Spanish, or, like, have you thought about doing bilingual?
You know what? I am going to have them available there. I have 2 books out now, School Crossing and Weekend Ways. And they basically follow there's 3 books are going to be created for each age group, for 1st or 6th grade. And they basically follow school, then home life, then school, because most kids spend their time in school, right? And so the third book comes out in a couple of months, and all 3 of them are in English now, but they will all be available in Spanish in a couple of months. Because I want that was the other piece of this. I always thought about doing it in Spanish. I want the parents to be able to understand what the kids are going through, and they're not sharing. Because I one of the things about growing up, especially when you're a child of immigrants, is, you don't want to ruffle your parents' feathers, because they've already been through a lot, right? And so they've have done all this
to get you here,
and to give you a better life. So there's some of that guilt associated with all of it that you're hypersensitive to. And I think that I wanted this to serve as a bridge for interfamilial conversation, so that kids could say, Mom, why don't you read it in Spanish? I'll read it in English. And then it's an opportunity for them to break open the window and say, okay, let's talk about this. Are you going through this? Because most kids, you get black beans and rice. Well, that's what you get. The mom has no idea the kids are laughing at you because you're reading that, and maybe there's another solution, right? But if the kid doesn't want to tell the mom because they're embarrassed and they don't want the mom to feel guilty, then it stays as an event that there was never any closure to, and it just perpetuates. Yes, right.
And they don't feel like they should tell the mom, right? Like, so yes, of course, you don't want to hurt your mom, but you're getting hurt at school. Like, they don't have a good solution. What are they going to do? Yeah.
And I think it perpetuates a life of being very protective of your parents, and regardless of what that takes, right? Like, not sharing stuff that maybe other kids in nuclear families would share with their parents, because there's this heightened level of, we don't want to burden them with this, right? So I think it's important.
That's really great. And I was asking for maybe 2 reasons, because of course, this podcast is for parents raising bilingual kids. So if someone's raising their kids in Spanish, and they only speak Spanish to their kid because that's their parenting, their parenting plan that they're using, then they'd want to read it in Spanish. And it's good, a lot of us can translate on the fly, but it's nice to have, it authentically written.
Yes.
It's not always going to be the same phrasing and things like that.
Correct.
So it's nice to have a book that's already in Spanish, or even English and Spanish together. Things like that. And I had a friend write a book that was bilingual French and English, and she made it rhyme in both, so they were like completely different. Like, it wasn't like word for word translation, but I love it even more because it wasn't just a translation. It was it made sense when you read it in that one language because it rhymed and it sounded good. And, you know, the
I
whole
love
like
it.
musicality went better. So I don't think it should ever be just a strict translation like this to this, you know. I think it's nicer to give the cultural flair.
The cultural flair, right, right.
Well, that's great. I'm very happy to hear. But yeah, the reason you gave is so important as well, because, you know, even if the parent, you know, hopefully they sit down and read it, but even if it's just, you know, they see the pictures and they can just bring it up and it, you know, they just come on over and see, and the kid can say, oh, that happened to me, or I sometimes feel that. It could open up so many doors.
Right, right.
So Maria, you said that there's book 3 is launching.
Book 3 is launching in a couple of months, definitely in the summer. School Crossing and Weekend Ways are the first 2 books. They're available at Amazon. Wow. And I also have a website called We Are MariVi, WeAremariv as in Victor I.com. And that actually it's getting expanded as we speak, but right now the version of the site has School Crossing in there, and there's a section for teachers and parents to actually questions for them to probe with the readers and the family. You know, why does MariVi not want to raise her hand? Why does she draw a self-portrait? You know, why behind a lot of things that happen to her, just to drive some conversation and understanding.
And as I said earlier, we will put all these things, easily clickable links in the show notes.
Great.
Listeners can just easily find them. Okay, great. And you said there's going to be 6 books total, correct?
Oh, there's going to be, I think when all is said and done, I'll have at least 18 English books, and then I'll have them all translated to Spanish.
So it's 3 books per
year for every level. Yeah. And I might do more. This is just, you know, my framework for now. And the first episode of the MariVi series, School Crossing, launched this month on Nuestra.tv, which is a streaming service. It's free. So for anyone who, you can download the app at the Apple App Store, or you can just go to your computer and open a browser and put in Nuestra, NUESTRA.tv, which means our TV, and you'll find the content there, the show there.
And it's free, so everybody can access it. Check it out, right? Even if you're learning Spanish or want to learn Spanish one day, I mean, why not, right? This is a great resource.
Oh, and that's a great point, Heather. I should mention this. This is not in Spanish. The episode is primarily in English, and when Spanish is spoken, it's when it would happen or get organically at home, right? When she's speaking to her parents or to her grandmother, or the parents are speaking to each other. And whenever there's Spanish spoken, which is only maybe 20% of the episode, there are subtitles, so anyone can watch this.
That's great.
Yeah.
But again, I think so often we focus on, I'm learning Spanish, I need to do Duolingo and learn phrases, but then you have a deficit in culture. You don't know anything about culture. And then if you don't go somewhere or have a friend or have an in, you could speak great Spanish and know nothing about Hispanic, Latino cultures. So, you know, if this is something that's important to your family or just important to you linguistically, why not, right? Because like we said, it's language and culture, it's just seeped into everything. So even just watching it can be eye-opening. Or if you're a teacher, I love that you have the thing for teachers and parents. Like, I'm doing an ESL class right now, or I don't like the term ESL because it's like second language, assuming they don't already speak more. So I'm taking a class for like teaching English as another language. And there's so many teachers in the US. Like, if you think of how many teachers deal with ELLs, English language learners, I mean, I always have a marketing hat on, but like, that's a huge audience, right? Because the number is increasing, and it has been since, you know, for decades. And that is a huge population that we need to, of course, help in the classroom, but like, you can help them by understanding more what's happening, you know, at home and in between, like the transitioning between home and school, because any transition can be hard, right? And when it's such a stark difference, that makes it all the more hard. So there's just, I can think of so many people that would benefit from this, right? Like, everyone.
I do too. And
it's great that it's in English, because the kids who, I mean, think of how big Dora got, like kids who are just monolingual kids growing up in the US, like they're going to now understand their classmates better, right? Even if they have no tie to this sort of thing, great. Like watch the story about the kid who does and learn and empathize. That's huge,
creating empaths.
Huge,
yes.
Yeah. Yes. That's so great. So we'll share all the links and everybody can download, because word of mouth, people sharing, people talking about things.
Yes.
100%.
Please do share. Yes. Wonderful. And I should mention, Heather, our social handles are We Are MariVi. We're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So everywhere. Feel free to join.
Once we link you one place, right?
Yeah.
Everybody starts connecting all the dots. And I think it's just so great. Well, I will definitely put links in because people can get their hands on those books, ASAP.
Yeah,
and then, like we said, Spanish version's coming out soon, which is always great. Yeah. And I think it's so touching that, you've had students, you said you do some, was it in person or online readings of the book?
Oh, both. I do both. Oh, and it's wonderful.
And so, yeah, the what do I want to say? The responses, the comments that kids give is probably just, makes it all worth it. Because I can imagine how many hours you're putting into this. And you said there's 18 books, maybe more. You're so optimistic.
Yeah.
But it must be a project of love, because that sounds like a huge undertaking.
Oh, it is a total passion project. And I gotta tell you, I've been surprised about a couple of things. You said you wear your marketing hat, so I want to share this with you. When I put all this together, because I have a marketing background, I put together this presentation and I said, okay, my primary market is going to be children of immigrants, full stop. Secondary market is going to be adult children of immigrants. And I have been amazed at how many children of immigrants that are adult children of immigrants have reached out to me with this MariVi series. The first response I got was from a brain surgeon who told me this was my life story. And, it was, and someone referred to it as the inner child of the adults. And I think there's a lot of truth there. There's a lot of opportunity to heal a lot of things for the inner child of children of immigrants. And I think that really surprised me at the response from the adults. And the last piece of it, which I find fascinating, which came up through the school visits, there's a market for children who are general market kids. So they're not Hispanic, not ethnic, right? But they're assimilating a multicultural family member. I had a little girl tell me in one of my schools that her father had passed away years ago, and her stepdad was from the Middle East, and he spoke Arabic at home all the time, and she didn't understand him. And she said, I am MariVi.
Oh, yeah. Which can happen. The family dynamics are, can be so many different things.
Oh, it was so moving to me, because it was just like, this whole other, and we know we're becoming more and more multicultural, but seeing it through the eyes of a kid and what they're going through, and then looping it back to the MariVi series was very heartwarming.
Yeah. And I think you're so right with the second point that you made about the adults who are feeling very touched and very seen and very just identifying with MariVi. It's, we are much more conscious. I think it's 2023. And we are all trying to heal, even the terminology, heal your inner child. That's very well known. That's very popular and trendy, and for good reason, right? We all really should heal our inner child and become, better versions of ourselves who aren't going to be triggered and angered. And I just think it's great, because what you're putting out is helping, and that's, maybe you didn't even think of it when you first started, that adults would connect with this. But yes, I mean, who's reading the book to kids? Adults. Right. Whether it's a teacher, a cousin, you name it, right? The parent. Going to be until they learn to read for themselves. And is that something you've considered? You said the ages were 1st to 6th grade. I mean, that's a huge difference, because a 1st grader is just getting there with those sight words, and maybe they can read a couple things, versus who's reading by themselves. So how did you take that into consideration?
So the sweet spot for the books right now is really second and third graders. They are just, because they're understanding a lot more of it, right? I've read to first graders who love to have the story read to them, but I think they're not as socially aware at that age just yet, right? They're still overwhelmed with being in school for the first time, that they can't pick up on the nuances because they're just, they don't have that maturation, right? So, I say first to sixth grade, and I see the sweet spot for this bundle. It starts with her. When the story starts, she says, "I'm 8 years old. I'm in third grade," and she's reminiscing about her first grade experience. So in that sense, it's about the first grade experience, and that's what the kids can relate to. Not so much for first graders to read it, but to understand that that's what she's referring back to.
Yeah. Are you thinking of making it? Is she going to grow with the series?
Yes, I want her to grow with this series. Yeah, because
the language will get more complex.
Yes, and it gets,
my teacher brain is now on of adapt,
because
those are different learners.
Different learners, and key events that happen in our lives are very different. When a child gets her first period, very different in a Hispanic family than an American family. Is it Sweet 16 or is it your quinceañera? I mean,
we saw a quinceañera the other day. We were in a bigger city near us that has a big Hispanic population, and my kids were just like deer in headlights. They couldn't stop looking at her. First we saw the limo. Oh, kids, look, a limo. And we didn't know if they're gonna just drive away, but they stopped. She came out. She had this gorgeous ball gown, total princess look to her. And both my kids were just staring at her. I'm like, all right. Well, at first, usually we're like, don't stare. But they were just like in awe.
Oh, that's so
they've
funny.
never seen a quinceañera before. And she was taking her pictures in the park, and we were strolling. But yeah, I mean, that's such a big event that, yeah.
Yes, it's a huge event. It's like a wedding, it's a huge event. And it deals with stuff that all of us dealt with, in talk of culture clash, the third book talks about the sister asking her mom if she can have a sleepover. And, for a Hispanic family, that's like dropping a nuclear bomb on the roof of their house, because you don't sleep over whose house and why. You have your own home. It's a moment of pride, and it's indignation to think that you're going to sleep at someone else's house. And those are little events that happen at different grades, and they don't get talked about, but they become moments of battle for the child and the parent
who lives both worlds,
who's living in both worlds.
But the sleepover, but the parents say no.
And the parents say no. And, ultimately we land on this reality. Each member of the family is searching for their own sense of community, right? For the Spanish dominant parent, it's the Spanish dominant traditions and people and language, right? For the bilingual, bicultural, they so want to assimilate and be like all their American friends. They can't see outside of that. So that's the community they want to belong in, right? But they know they don't.
It's a push-pull, because I feel like how do I say this? Like, anyone who's moved out of their country, or they're going to clamp down more, because they're like, well, we really have to do this because you're not growing up the way I did, so we got to be even more strict. Or I think of it with like any religious convert. The convert is way more strict than the people born into that religion,
right?
Because they're
totally
trying to
much more
prove,
religious. Yes.
Yeah. So there is a clamping down when you've now uprooted, and you've you're trying to raise your kids the Latino way.
Right.
In the US, you're going to be even more no.
Totally, because you don't have the physical land, right? So exactly. It's your value system becomes your physical framework and your infrastructure, right?
But the 10-year-old kid does not see it. The
does
way
not
his
see
or her
it
parents
that way.
See it.
No, not at all.
Why is Mom so mean?
Yeah, and I think there's another piece of it, I think too, which is for collective culture success. We could have a whole separate podcast on successful parenting, but success is the kids they mirror me, they're like me. I was a successful parent. I put them through school. They stayed in my house till they got married. And now they're creating more members of the collective. This was successful parenting, right? Oh, and I had this conversation with my 90-year-old mother not too long ago. It's like, Mom, success to you was what the collective success is, which is all about they're like me. But we were born and raised here. And for an American, success is you found your own path.
Be different.
Successfully. Individually, individualistically, right? So of course there was going to be a culture clash, right? So there's so many layers to all of this, just the terms we use every day and how they are defined across the cultures. It's worth really investigating and just talking about it.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy that you are working on these books. You have this passion project, because it's bringing that to light, and it's, giving us this physical thing, like, okay, let's read a book, and then it'll bridge to make it a little bit easier to talk about all these kind of fraught issues, right?
Right.
And I can imagine that they're going to get even more difficult and challenging, and as the MariVi gets older, because
yes,
that's what happens, right? We say little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems,
big problems.
That works the same here, whether you're a child of immigrants or not.
Right.
So, well, thank you. I mean, this was really such a pleasure. So anything else that I think you mentioned where we can find you, but maybe just remind us again.
Yeah, wearemarivi.com has more information about MariVi, and you can buy from the wearemarivi.com site as well. It goes back to Amazon. So all things lead back to Amazon when it comes to the books. And nuestra.tv is where you can go watch the first episode, and 2 more are coming out this year.
That's so wonderful. And we will, again, everything's in the show notes. So just head over there and you can click and find all the good things. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I am really floored. I'm like amazed that all you've done and all you're working to do. So
thank you.
Keep it up. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Heather. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time today.
Such a pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Have a good day.
You too.